Good morning, everyone. Let's be honest, people can be frustrating. Someone cuts you off in traffic, a coworker takes credit for your idea, a friend forgets your birthday. And in that moment, you feel it. That surge of irritation, that flash of anger. You want to react. But what if I told you that you never have to feel that way again? Not because people will stop being difficult, they won't, but because you will change the way you see them. People often get frustrated, upset, or even angry because they expect others to behave in a certain way. When reality doesn't align with these expectations, it creates a gap filled with disappointment, resentment, or frustration. The truth is, most of the anger we experience in life isn't because of what others do, but because of how we believe they should act. The more expectations we place on people, the more opportunities we create to be let down. Think about it. How many times have you gotten upset because someone didn't say thank you after you helped them, or because a friend didn't check in on you when you were struggling, or because a coworker didn't give you credit for your idea? These frustrations stem from one underlying belief. They should have done better. But according to whom? Expectations are unspoken rules we create in our minds about how the world should work. The problem is not everyone plays by the same rules. We expect kindness, fairness, appreciation, and consideration, but the reality is people act based on their own perspectives, emotions, and priorities. Just because we believe someone should be a certain way doesn't mean they will be. The world doesn't operate based on our personal rulebook. A major shift happens when we stop expecting and start accepting. This doesn't mean lowering your standards or allowing people to mistreat you. It simply means acknowledging that people are who they are, not who we think they should be. When we accept this truth, we free ourselves from unnecessary frustration. Imagine walking into a storm and getting angry that it's raining. It sounds ridiculous, right? We don't get mad at the rain for being wet. We don't take it personally when the wind blows. We simply acknowledge that it is what it is, adjust accordingly, and move forward. The same mindset can apply to people. People will be selfish. People will be forgetful. People will be inconsiderate at times. Not because they're out to get you, but because they are dealing with their own lives, thoughts, and struggles. Everyone is the main character in their own story. They are not constantly thinking about how their actions affect you, just as you don't always think about how yours affect them. Lowering expectations doesn't mean giving up on meaningful connections or ignoring bad behavior. It means adjusting your mindset so that when people don't meet your expectations, you don't take it as a personal attack. Instead of thinking they should have done better, shift to this is who they are right now. Instead of saying, I would never do that to them, remind yourself, they are not me. This doesn't mean you tolerate toxic relationships. It means you see people for who they are and decide how to interact with them from a place of clarity rather than emotional frustration. If someone consistently disrespects you, you don't need to get angry. You just set boundaries. If a friend never reaches out first, instead of resenting them, accept that they may not be great at maintaining relationships and decide if you still want to invest in that friendship. By lowering expectations, you reduce the number of times you feel let down. You learn to appreciate people for what they do rather than resenting them for what they don't. You stop looking at relationships as transactions where you give and expect something equal in return and start seeing them as opportunities to connect, give, and receive without conditions. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It requires self-awareness and practice. Every time you feel anger rising because of someone else's actions, pause and ask yourself, what expectation did I have that wasn't met? Then ask, is this expectation reasonable? Can I let it go? More often than not, you'll find that the frustration isn't necessary. Letting go of expectations doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop forcing the world to be something it's not. And when you do that, you'll find that fewer things bother you, fewer people frustrate you, and life becomes a lot more peaceful. When something frustrating happens, our natural reaction is to assume the worst If someone cuts us off in traffic, we immediately think they're rude or reckless. If a friend cancels plans at the last minute, we assume they don't value our time. If a coworker speaks to us harshly, we might believe they have something against us. But what if none of those assumptions were true? What if the person who cut us off was rushing to the hospital? What if our friend canceled plans because they were struggling with something personal? What if the coworker who snapped at us was dealing with stress we couldn't see? Most of the time, we don't know the full story behind people's actions, yet we instantly create a negative narrative in our minds that justifies our anger or frustration. The problem is that these assumptions are often wrong. They are based on our perspective, not on the reality of the other person's situation. When we assume negative intent, we set ourselves up for unnecessary stress and anger. Instead of jumping to conclusions, we can learn to reframe the situation. Reframing is the practice of looking at an event from a different angle with a more open and understanding mindset. It means replacing judgment with curiosity. Instead of assuming they're being rude on purpose, we can ask ourselves, is there another possible explanation for their behavior? Imagine you're at a restaurant and the waiter seems unfriendly. Instead of taking it personally, consider other possibilities. Maybe they're exhausted from a long shift. Maybe they just received bad news. Maybe they're dealing with personal struggles. By shifting your focus from this is about me to this might be about them, you instantly reduce feelings of irritation. Reframing also helps in personal relationships. Suppose a close friend hasn't been responding to your messages. Your first thought might be, they're ignoring me. They don't care. But before assuming the worst, consider other perspectives. Maybe they're overwhelmed with work or family responsibilities. Maybe they're going through a difficult time and don't have the energy to talk. Instead of reacting with frustration, reach out with empathy. Hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. I hope you're doing okay. This approach not only prevents unnecessary resentment, but also strengthens relationship. This shift in mindset is especially important when dealing with criticism. If someone criticizes your work or your ideas, the instinctive reaction is to feel attacked. But instead of seeing it as a personal insult, reframe it as an opportunity to learn. Ask yourself, is there any truth in what they're saying? Could this help me improve? By looking at feedback objectively rather than emotionally, you remove the power it has to bother you. Reframing can also apply to everyday annoyances. Imagine you're stuck in a long line at the grocery store. You could see it as wasted time and get frustrated, or you could reframe it as a chance to slow down, breathe, and be present. Maybe it's an opportunity to listen to a podcast or observe the world around you. The situation doesn't change, but your experience of it does. The key to mastering this skill is awareness. The next time you feel irritation bubbling up, pause and ask yourself, what assumption am I making? Is there another way to look at this? How can I respond with understanding instead of frustration? This doesn't mean excusing bad behavior or letting people walk over you. It simply means choosing not to let situations control your emotions. When you reframe your perspective, you take back your power. You stop letting small annoyances ruin your day. You stop reacting based on assumptions and start responding based on wisdom. Over time, this practice becomes second nature. You begin to see people not as obstacles to your peace, but as human beings with their own struggles and imperfections. And when you do that, you'll find that fewer things bother you, fewer people frustrate you, and life becomes a lot more peaceful. One of the biggest mistakes we make in life is believing that we can control how other people act. We think that if we explain ourselves better, they'll understand. If we're kind enough, they'll be kind in return. If we work hard, we'll be appreciated. And while these things should be true in an ideal world, reality doesn't always work that way. People will do what they want to do regardless of how you feel about it. You can't force someone to respect you. You can't make someone value your time. You can't control whether someone is rude, dismissive, or unfair. What you can control is how you respond. There is a moment, however brief, between an event and your reaction to it. That moment is where your power lies. Something happens and you feel a surge of anger, irritation, or disappointment. But before you respond, there's a choice. Do I let this control me, or do I take control of myself? Imagine someone criticizes you unfairly. Your first instinct might be to defend yourself, argue, or even lash out. But what if instead you paused? What if you took a deep breath and asked yourself, do I need to engage with this? Not every battle is worth fighting. Not every comment deserves a response. Often the best reaction is no reaction at all. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions. It means acknowledging them without letting them dictate your behavior. You might feel anger, but you don't have to become angry. You might feel frustration, but you don't have to act out in frustration. Instead of letting external events decide your mood, you become the one in charge. Think of your mind like a car. If someone jumps in and starts steering you toward anger, irritation, or sadness, you've given them control. But when you take a step back and consciously decide how to respond, you take the wheel back, you decide where your energy goes. This mindset shift is incredibly powerful in daily life. Imagine you're in a meeting and a coworker takes credit for your idea. You could get angry, confront them aggressively, or dwell on it all day. But what if instead you saw it as an opportunity to show professionalism and self-control? You could calmly bring attention to your contributions at the right time, reinforcing your value without letting emotions cloud your judgment. Or think about a situation where someone is rude to you, a stranger in a store, a driver honking impatiently, or even a family member being dismissive. You could react, raise your voice, argue, but ask yourself, will this change anything? Most of the time, the answer is no. Engaging with negativity only drains your energy. Instead, you can choose to let it go, walk away, or even respond with kindness, not for them, but for yourself. The ability to control your response is also crucial in relationships. In an argument with a loved one, emotions can escalate quickly, but the moment you decide to stay calm instead of reacting impulsively, the entire conversation shifts. You create space for understanding instead of conflict. You set the tone instead of letting anger dictate the outcome. This approach isn't about ignoring problems. It's about responding in a way that serves you rather than reacting in a way that harms you. When you control your response, you keep your peace intact. You stop letting small inconveniences, rude people, or unfair situations ruin your day. It takes practice. At first, you might catch yourself reacting before thinking, but over time, as you become more aware of that brief pause before your response, you'll find yourself making better choices. You'll stop being a victim of circumstances and start being the creator of your own emotional state. The world won't always be fair, people won't always be kind, situations won't always go your way, but none of that has to decide how you feel. The power to stay calm, to stay centered, and to stay in control is always yours. One of the biggest reasons people get upset, angry, or frustrated is because they take things personally. Someone makes a rude comment and we assume they meant to hurt us. A friend cancels plans and we feel rejected. A coworker ignores our idea in a meeting and we think they don't respect us. But in reality, most of the time, people's actions have little to do with us. The way people behave is a reflection of them, their thoughts, emotions, stress, and experiences, not of our worth or value. Yet we often interpret their actions through a personal lens, assuming everything they do is directed at us. This is where unnecessary suffering begins. Imagine you send a text to a friend and they don't respond. Hours pass, maybe even a full day. Your mind starts racing. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? Do they not care about our friendship? But what if the truth is much simpler? Maybe they were overwhelmed with work. Maybe they saw the message and forgot to reply. Maybe they're dealing with something personal and don't have the energy to talk. In almost every case, their lack of response is about them, not you. Taking things personally places an unnecessary emotional burden on you. You start overanalyzing every interaction, constantly seeking validation and reassurance. But the moment you realize that other people's behavior is a product of their own internal world, you free yourself from this cycle. Think about a time when you were having a bad day. Maybe you were stressed about work, dealing with personal struggles, or just exhausted. If someone asked you a question, you might have given a short or distracted answer, not because you were trying to be rude, but because your mind was elsewhere. Now imagine they took offense and assumed you were ignoring them. They walk away upset, even though your intention was never to hurt them. This is how misunderstandings and unnecessary conflicts arise. People are constantly experiencing their own struggles, and yet we assume their actions are meant to hurt us. But the truth is, most of the time, we're not even on their minds. Everyone is busy dealing with their own thoughts, emotions, and priorities. When you stop taking things personally, you gain an incredible sense of freedom. You no longer let small things ruin your day. You stop reading too much into situations. You let go of resentment toward people who may not even realize they upset you. Instead of assuming negative intent, you assume neutrality. Or better yet, you assume kindness. This shift in mindset is especially powerful when dealing with criticism. If someone criticizes your work, your first instinct might be to feel hurt, embarrassed, or defensive. But instead of seeing it as an attack, what if you viewed it as feedback? If the criticism is valid, you can use it to improve. If it's unfair, it says more about them than it does about you. Either way, it doesn't have to affect your sense of self-worth. Another powerful benefit of not taking things personally is that it helps in difficult conversations. Imagine you're discussing an issue with someone and they start raising their voice. Instead of matching their energy and escalating the argument, you can stay calm. You understand that their frustration is about how they feel. It's not a personal attack on you. This allows you to respond with clarity instead of emotion, which often leads to a more productive resolution. This mindset also helps in professional settings. If a boss or coworker seems dismissive, it's easy to feel unappreciated. But instead of assuming they dislike you, consider that they might be stressed, distracted, or dealing with challenges you don't know about. By not taking things personally, you remain professional, composed, and in control of your emotions. Over time, the ability to detach from other people's behavior becomes second nature. You begin to realize that no one can control your emotions except you. No one has the power to make you feel bad unless you give them that power. When you stop taking things personally, you stop reacting impulsively, you stop seeking constant approval, and most importantly, you stop letting other people dictate your inner peace. The world doesn't revolve around you, not in a negative way, but in a liberating way. People are too busy navigating their own lives to be constantly thinking about yours. When you truly understand this, you become unshakable. Nothing that others do can disturb your peace because you know their actions are about them, not you. And that kind of freedom is priceless. Emotional detachment is one of the most powerful tools for staying calm and unbothered by what others say or do. Many people misunderstand what it means to detach emotionally. They think it means becoming cold, indifferent, or shutting down emotionally. In reality, emotional detachment is about creating a healthy space between yourself and external events so that they don't have power over you. It's about observing situations rather than getting lost in them. Most people go through life reacting to everything around them. If someone is rude, they immediately feel offended. If plans change unexpectedly, they feel frustrated. If someone criticizes them, they take it personally. They allow their emotions to be dictated by what's happening outside of them. The problem with this approach is that it gives all the control to others. The more reactive you are, the easier it is for people and situations to affect your mood. Emotional detachment changes this dynamic. Instead of reacting emotionally to everything, you step back and observe. Imagine watching a scene from a movie. You see the characters interacting, but you are not in the scene yourself. You are simply watching. This is the mindset you develop with emotional detachment. You still experience life, but you don't allow yourself to be pulled into every drama, argument, or negative situation. One of the best ways to practice emotional detachment is to remind yourself that most things are not as serious as they seem in the moment. Think about the last time you were angry about something. At the time, it felt significant, but days or weeks later, it likely didn't matter as much. What if, instead of getting upset in the moment, you could train yourself to see things with that same long-term perspective? Would it still be worth your energy? Another key part of emotional detachment is recognizing that you don't have to engage with every situation. Not every rude comment requires a response. Not every argument needs to be won. Sometimes the best thing you can do is simply let things pass. Imagine someone trying to provoke you with an insult. If you react with anger, they win. If you ignore it and move on, you keep your power. Emotional detachment also helps in relationships. Suppose a friend or partner is in a bad mood and snaps at you. Your natural reaction might be to snap back, feel hurt, or take it personally. But what if instead you took a step back and recognized that their mood has nothing to do with you? Maybe they had a stressful day. Maybe they're dealing with something internally. Instead of being pulled into their emotions, you stay grounded in your own peace. You can acknowledge their feelings without letting them affect yours. This mindset is incredibly useful in professional settings as well. Imagine your boss criticizes your work. Instead of feeling crushed or defensive, you detach emotionally and evaluate the situation objectively. Is the criticism valid? If so, you take the feedback and improve. If not, you recognize that their opinion is just that, an opinion. Either way, you don't allow it to shake your confidence or dictate your emotions. Another benefit of emotional detachment is that it protects you from unnecessary stress. So much of the anxiety people experience comes from over-identifying with their thoughts and emotions. They get caught in loops of worry, replaying negative experiences over and over. But when you practice detachment, you learn to observe your thoughts rather than become consumed by them. You recognize that just because a thought enters your mind doesn't mean you have to believe it or act on it. A simple exercise to build emotional detachment is to pause before reacting. Whenever you feel yourself getting upset, take a deep breath and ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Will this matter in a week, a month, or a year? Do I need to respond, or can I just let it go? More often than not, you'll realize that the best response is no response at all. Practicing emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop over caring about things that don't deserve your energy. You still experience life, but you do so with a sense of control, balance, and inner peace. You stop letting other people's emotions dictate yours. You stop allowing small annoyances to ruin your day. You stop getting pulled into unnecessary conflicts. Over time, this ability to step back and observe instead of react becomes second nature. You become less emotionally exhausted because you no longer waste energy on things that don't serve you. You feel calmer, stronger, and more in control of your life. When you master emotional detachment, nothing and no one can shake your peace because you realize that you are the one who decides how you feel. One of the most effective ways to stay calm and unbothered is to develop an abundance mindset. Many people go through life feeling frustrated, jealous, or resentful because they believe that life is unfair or that they are missing out on something. They see someone else succeeding and feel like they are falling behind. They experience a setback and assume they've lost their only chance. They hold on to negative experiences because they believe they were robbed of something they deserved. This type of thinking leads to constant stress and dissatisfaction. An abundance mindset changes everything. It is the belief that there is more than enough success, opportunities, happiness, and peace to go around. Instead of seeing life as a competition where someone else's win is your loss, you start seeing the world as full of endless possibilities. When you develop this mindset, it becomes much harder for people or situations to upset you. For example, imagine you were passed over for a promotion at work. With a scarcity mindset, you might feel resentful. You might think, that was my only chance. This isn't fair, now I'm stuck. But with an abundance mindset, your perspective shifts. You think, this wasn't the right opportunity for me, but there are many others out there. Something better is coming. Instead of wasting energy on frustration, you focus on growth and new possibility. This mindset also helps when dealing with difficult people. Suppose a friend distances themselves from you, or a coworker is rude. A scarcity mindset makes you feel rejected, like you are losing something. But an abundance mindset reminds you that your happiness and worth don't depend on any single person. There are endless opportunities to build new friendships, form better connections, and surround yourself with people who truly value you. When you truly believe this, other people's actions stop bothering you as much. And an abundance mindset also helps with comparison. Many people feel jealous or discouraged when they see someone else succeeding. They think, why them and not me? I'll never be that lucky. But in reality, someone else's success doesn't take anything away from you. If a friend gets a great job, it doesn't mean you won't find one. If someone you know is in a happy relationship, it doesn't mean you won't have love in your life. Life isn't a limited pie where one person's gain means less for everyone else. When you shift your mindset, you stop feeling bitter about others' success and start feeling inspired by it. Practicing gratitude is one of the fastest ways to develop an abundance mindset. When you focus on what you already have instead of what you lack, you naturally feel more content. Instead of dwelling on things that go wrong, you appreciate what's going right. If someone treats you unfairly, you don't obsess over it because you recognize all the other people in your life who treat you well. If you experience a setback, you don't feel defeated because you trust that new opportunities will come. This approach makes you much more resilient and less affected by temporary problems. Another powerful way to strengthen an abundance mindset is to remind yourself that nothing is truly scarce except time and energy. If you waste time being angry, jealous, or resentful, you are the only one who suffers. The people you're upset with, they're living their lives. The situations that frustrated you, they've already passed. But your emotional energy is valuable. You can either spend it dwelling on things that don't serve you or invest it in things that bring you peace and happiness. When you realize how precious your energy is, you become very selective about what you let bother you. An abundance mindset also helps you detach from the need for external validation. You stop seeking approval from others because you know your worth isn't dependent on their opinions. You stop chasing things out of fear of missing out because you trust that good things will come to you naturally. This sense of inner security makes it almost impossible for others to shake your peace. Over time, as you embrace this mindset, you stop feeling like a victim of circumstances. You no longer get upset over minor setbacks, unfair situations, or other people's behavior. You understand that there are always more opportunities, more chances, and more ways to create the life you want. Nothing and no one has the power to take away what is truly meant for you. The world is full of abundance, but only if you choose to see it. When you do, you realize that nothing is worth losing your peace over because there is always more to gain.